What's up? So this episode is in color because I'm going to be talking about books, and showing you book covers in black and white seems dumb and unhelpful. So make an exception today. So I'm reading this right now. To photograph is to learn how to die. I was planning on in the next couple weeks making a book report video about this book, which I still plan to do. It's just taking me a lot longer to read this than I thought. So just mentioning that, not talking about this book today, but we will. So when I talk about books that help my photography, what am I talking about? What do I mean by help my photography? I don't mean technically speaking. When you first start photography, you're bogged down in like the technical stuff of photography, but there comes a point where you kind of learn what you need to learn technically, and then you got to worry about the really hard part, which is conceptualizing what kind of photography you fit in. So the books I'm about to talk about aren't books that helped me get better with a camera. They are books that helped me learn where photography fits in my life and where I fit in photography conceptually. So a lot of these books really may have nothing to do with photography, but they do have to do with creativity. So maybe you're not a photographer, maybe you're some other type of artist. I think some of these books may be helpful for you as well. Let's roll our sleeves up and get started, shall we? I'm going to start with some obvious ones. The Austin Kleon series, Steal Like an Artist, Show Your Work, and Keep Going. I can't find my copy of Steal Like an Artist anywhere, so just pretend I have it. But these are super helpful, especially in the beginning of learning how to be creative, learning how to think outside the box, and learning how to just make stuff day to day. Show Your Work is about process. Its focus is on the middle rather than the results. So the value in art comes from the process of making, not the result. If we were results oriented, then you just need to make stock photography, because that's kind of what that is. You are taking a photo with intent to sell. But really, if you want to find deeper and lasting enjoyment in the art of photography, you need to learn to love the process. And this book is very good for that. Keep Going takes Show Your Work and talks about it over the long term. So, I'm in a place now where I'm in year 15 of photography and making things with regularity. And this book, I think, is more valuable for the stage I'm at now. In fact, I probably should reread it. It's been a while. The first point in this book, he's got all the his rules on the back. The first one is every day is Groundhog Day. And I was once told by a mentor that it's a new world every 30 days, meaning in business or whatever, especially when you're doing like freelance and stuff. And so I think about that a lot. Is every day is Groundhog Day in some regards, but every month is a new world that you have to address and come up with new ideas to survive and maintain this practice. Okay, another obvious one, The War of Art. Now, The War of Art is something I've read a few times, and it tackles this thing that it frames called resistance, which is things that are keeping you from being disciplined with your work. And the subtitle is Break Through Blocks and Win Your Creative Battles. I have grown somewhat more and more distant with this book as I've become more self-aware and time has gone on. That the idea of resistance, basically the idea of whatever's keeping you from sitting down, and in this case, he's an author, so writing, or going out to take photos or whatever. That's not my problem. Personally, I don't have the problem with not making my work. My problem is everything else in life that is keeping me from just making stuff all the time. So basically my challenge personally is to just be able to keep making stuff without my whole life falling apart around me. So the making stuff, I don't really have resistance to the everyday creation aspect. That just comes out of me. I have to do it to breathe. One thing that I can imagine being a problem with resistance is if you're an author, writing a book seems like kind of miserable. So I can imagine that that's something you keep having to address as an author. I don't know of that many authors who talk about the joys of sitting there typing for hours and hours. And I guess my version of that would be editing videos. I love the creation of the video. I love the writing of these videos, the conceptualization, ideation, brainstorming. The thing I really struggle with wanting to procrastinate is the sitting down and editing this, like what I'm shooting right now. Yeah, War of Art. Pretty essential. I would say if you follow creative people, they probably have recommended this book at some point. So yeah, these are the obvious ones. I'm not going to talk long about this. On photography, this is somewhat obvious if you're a photographer, Susan Sontag. And it's very philosophical. It talks about, philosophies around photography. In the beginning of the book, she talks about how much just normal people are addicted to photography via travel or whatever. It's kind of like helps ground them into believing that they were actually there. And this is like way before iPhones and stuff. And she kind of addresses that phenomenon weirdly. But yeah, it is directly about photography and it's very philosophical. It's got some parallels to, the book I talked about that I'm writing a book report about. Okay. Now for some less obvious. I read this book last year and I love it. I'm probably going to reread it. Haruki Murakami's What I Talk About When I Talk About Running. And this book talks about his relationship with writing because he's a novelist, and his regular practice of running. And so I like to run. I'm not running marathons or anything. I do it for pure enjoyment and I try to keep it there. I don't compete or anything, but I do like to run, and I've run on and off throughout most of my life because I love the meditation aspect of it. And he talks about all the things that go into being a good runner, and it's basically just it's talking about making art. That's what it is. He's talking about running, but when you read his meditation on running, you're like, oh, this applies to pretty much every art form in some way or another. So basically, he kept a journal of his progress when training for the New York City Marathon, and used all that to write a book. And it's very good. Even if you don't like running or care about running, I think it's worth reading. And it's a memoir about his life. He talks about how he became a novelist, which is super interesting because he just, if I remember correctly, he used to own a bar and then just decided to write a novel, and that novel just hit. I don't know. I mean, could you imagine that working? I mean, that's crazy. How good of a novel would that have to be for your just first one to just pop? I don't know. That's wild. Next up, I read this last year as well, David Chang's Eat a Peach. Now, why do I have a chef's memoir on this list? Because David Chang, I think, is one of the most creative minds of our time. But basically, I think the way he thinks, the way he comes up with ideas, the way he takes two things that aren't related and combines them and has built an entire brand and business on that, is pretty amazing. And I think it's important. And he also talks about the struggles of working and the struggles of when work becomes everything and you don't really have you work for work's sake, and you go so deep and you let it just eat you alive. And he talks about struggling with that. He talks about going to therapy. He talks about mental health, all that kind of stuff. And I think that any person who makes stuff would benefit from this book, and maybe feels like they have some things in common with David Chang. But yeah, he opens up a lot about this, but I think he's one of the best creative minds of our time right now. He talks about, like as one example, he went to Chick-fil-A in Auburn, Alabama, of all places, War Eagle. But he went to Chick-fil-A and he's like, oh, I can make a better Chick-fil-A. And so he basically makes a better Chick-fil-A. And he basically frames it as not really being successful, but he called it Fuku because his company is Momofuku, but it also, sounds like FU as well. I don't curse on this channel. I try not to, at least. But yeah, so anyways, he's got stuff like that where he like talks about like how he came up with certain ideas, and some of them work, some of them don't. And I think it's valuable. A lot of process, a lot of good stuff in that book. I've really enjoyed reading that book. It's a breezy read too. It was really fun to read. And on that note, actually, one of my favorite photo books is actually his first Momofuku cookbook. Because I just love how they visualize dishes. It's not like regular food photography. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's shot on film. But these photos are just like really cool. So yeah, like I bought this book initially because of the photos of the dishes and of the stories, because he talks a little bit about his story in this book as well. And so I don't know. Cookbooks as photo books is an interesting category, and I find myself really enjoying, he's just got like little things like that. I mean, just like very loose photos of things. There's a picture of him. It looks like it's on Portrait 800 or something. But yeah, Oh yeah, that's a good one. But yeah, they're very like loose, very photojournalistic. And so anyways, so this is another book that I enjoy flipping through. It's a cookbook, but it has great photos. Cookbooks with great photography. That's an interesting video idea. In the photo book lane, The Americans. This is a photo book by Robert Frank, and you've probably heard of it. It's not, this is no deep cut in photo books for sure, but it's photos from across America, and just of people living life in America. I mean, like, look at this. I mean, that's cool. In Gallup, New Mexico, which I recently looked. In Gallup, New Mexico, I think you can actually buy the town. I think the town is for sale. Like, that's how small it is. Yeah, it's just, here's a photo in Nebraska. And the reason this is impactful to me, this is more of a personal one, is because I love the road. I love the American road. I love traveling through America. And that book, The Americans, I've had it for a long time, but it really impacted me, and actually probably is reflected in those photos that I shot for the Texas trip in the last video I did. This road trip to Texas sucked, I think I titled it. And there's probably a Robert Frank influence in some of those photos. I love these little vignettes of different pieces of America. In fact, I probably need to, I haven't flipped through this in a while. I'm going to flip through this again tonight, because they're important to at least the kind of photos I like to take, for sure. And I'm not even that good at taking pictures of people emotionally. Okay. Last but not least, definitely not least, this is actually one of my favorite books on creativity ever. Boom. Werner Herzog's The Guide for the Perplexed. A Guide for the Perplexed. This is a book of conversations with Werner Herzog. He talks to Paul Cronin, and it's just a series of conversations. These did not all take place at the same time. It's like reading episodes of a podcast with Werner Herzog. He talks about the importance of reading. He talks about how he started his production company. He talks about how he finances his films. He talks about, having his filmmaking school where he makes people walk across Europe and write about it. And he claims he can tell if you didn't actually do it based on your journals. He talks about making the movie Fitzcarraldo. He talks about making, I believe he talks about making Grizzly Man, as the cover would imply. I read this during COVID. And it takes a little while, and it's one of those you can break up, but man, I love this book. I want to revisit this again because it's just got so many good tidbits. I respect Werner Herzog because he is an artist that understands that it is a job. He is not the kind of artist you see in culture most of the time. He is the kind of artist that has a purpose behind what he's making, and he does it with efficiency. He's organized, and he gets the job done. No fluff. I think there's one, I have read a ton of Werner Herzog stuff, so sometimes I don't know if it's in this book or in something else, some interview I've seen with him. And I think it is in this book, actually. But he has this documentary about Antarctica, which I actually own on Blu-ray. And he would have to argue with the cinematographer, I forget who, about, he basically said, do not put beautiful shots in this. Like, he said we need to focus on the story of Antarctica, and putting like beautiful shots in there is kind of like navel gazy, right? And it's funny, as a photographer, I'm always tempted to, when I make these videos, I always want to make just long drawn out shots of some beautiful scene, but I always hear Werner Herzog in my head saying that takes away from the story, and I'm losing people. And there's like a lack of efficiency in telling a story that way. And I think that this book actually, now that, like, when I started Double Negative, I think this book was in my head, and Werner Herzog's military-like way of telling stories has really affected with how I relaunched my YouTube channel with Double Negative. But again, like, as a photographer, just read this. I don't care if it's about filmmaking. It doesn't matter. There's so many important things in this book about just getting what you need to get. And if you got a project within you, or if you got something you need to make, you need to just go make it. You need to figure out how to do it. I mean, he's forged documents to film in foreign countries. I mean, he's going to do what he's got to do to make his movie. And we should be the same way. If you got to go capture small towns and take photos of small towns across the Southeast and beyond, then you get in your truck and you just go do it, and you figure out how to make that happen. And that's, if you need to, do X project, you just got to do it. Like, you can't wait around for somebody to like be like, here's a check, I'm your Medici. Like, that doesn't happen. You just got to do it. If you got an idea, you just got to go for it. As somebody who makes things, as a photographer, I do really see myself as kind of a worker bee in a lot of ways. And I think maybe that's due to all that I've consumed from Werner Herzog, which is like, this is a job. This is a real job. I do all this full time. Okay. This is my life. This is my job. This is all I do. And so, I think A Guide for the Perplexed is probably maybe one of the most impactful things I've read over the last 5 years. I really want to do kind of more stuff like this. I do want to go on a deep dive with photo books. I think that would be interesting. I've seen some of those happen. Basically had a goal at the beginning of this year to read 30 books, and it's going terribly right now. Because I'm caught up working on the YouTube and traveling, working, all that stuff. I just haven't read as much as I had hoped. I finished The Three Body Problem, which blew my mind. Love that. And that also is it's a journey to get through. I'm reading To Photograph Is to Learn How to Die, which you'll hear about soon-ish. I'm a maniac that reads multiple books at once. I'm reading Andrei Tarkovsky's Sculptures in Time, so maybe I will talk about that as well. I'm reading a book about work right now, and like finding our purpose and meaning through our work. I've got a lot of stuff that I kind of read all at once. And it's a miracle I had these books to even like hold up for you, because I'm kind of more of a Kindle guy nowadays for portability reasons. But anyways, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next video, where I go to New York City with a chef to take photos on film and eat a lot, basically. So that's this Thursday's video, and I will see you soon.